Hey everybody, welcome to this video. So hopefully if you're studying an Inspector Calls, you've seen my video where I made an Inspector Calls revision song. And what I did for that was I took 5 quotations that I felt were really important to our understanding of the play, and I turned them into a song so that it'll help you memorize them. Now, a number of you have messaged me and said, could we look at more quotations? And really, for me, those 5 quotations would be enough for any exam answer, but I'm more than happy to look at some. So what I'm going to look at today are some of the key quotes which are picked out in Mr. Bruff's Guide to an Inspector Calls, available for £3.99 at mrbruff.com or amazon.co.uk. There are more in the ebook, but I'm just going to go through the first page of them and just talk to you about the quotation and why it's important. I think we can apply this to all of our texts, that sometimes students they can pick a quotation and they feel like they know it's important, but they're unable to explain why it's important. And it's that next bit, of course, which is the key part. So the first two are quotations that I actually used in the revision song, Pink and Intimate, Brighter and Harder. These are stage directions, and one of the things about analysing a play that the exam board often say is students have to be aware that they are analysing a play. So it's no good to write about a play in the same way that you would write about a novel or a poem. You've got to acknowledge that it is a different form of writing, and one of the things that makes it different is the fact that it contains stage directions. Now, stage directions are written by the playwright. They're in italics, and they are the writer's way of saying this is what this bit needs to be like, whether it's the staging, the lighting, the sort of setting, or the way the characters move, their tone of voice. And it's interesting when you think about the form of a play, because here's an example. Priestley writes the play, but Priestley is not going to be around for every production of the play. So drama groups pick up the play and decide to put on a production. When they decide to pick it up and put on a production, they don't have Priestley there. But Priestley is very keen to make sure that when people put on this play, it retains his key message about socialism and a critique of capitalism and all the rest of it. So he will use stage directions to say, look, yes, there is an element where you get to decide. You get to do the casting and various bits and bobs, but you must do this. So if there's ever a stage direction, actually, and this is the same for Shakespeare, we can look at it and think, okay, well, this is clearly important to the writer because they've put it in and stipulated, look, this is how this bit needs to go. So let's try and break apart why it's important. Now, Pink and Intimate moves to Brighter and Harder. It's a description of the lighting. There's the Burling family at the beginning with Pink and Intimate, which suggests that they have a rosy view of life. They're looking at things through rose-tinted glasses, seeing everything in an overly positive way. When the inspector rings the doorbell, the lighting changes to Brighter and Harder, and that stage direction suggests the inspector has arrived to put them under the spotlight, to interrogate them, to shed light on the events. Now, the stage directions are also used to describe the Burling's house and furniture as heavily comfortable but not cosy and home-like. So, there are 2 things to talk about here. Number one, the excess that they live with, but the not cozy and home-like suggests that their relationships are perhaps not as deep as they should be. They're sort of not authentic relationships. The description of Mr. Burling, again, as a stage direction, heavy-looking, rather portentous man in his middle 50s, with fairly easy manners, but rather provincial in his speech. And here we get this stage direction really just to show that Mr. Burling is self-centered. More stage directions, pleased with themselves. That's the whole Burling family covered in those that one stage direction, and that really shows how they are proud and arrogant and self-obsessed, which of course are some of the characteristics that really bring about Eva's downfall. Now, interesting about Mrs. Burling, because depending if you've seen film versions or plays, Mrs. Burling is often, I feel, underperformed, but the description of her from the stage directions is cold, and that word describes how she is at the beginning, and obviously emotionally cold, and therefore not really caring about Eva. But tragically, that doesn't really change with Mrs. Burling. She doesn't find any sense of redemption. She stays cold. And that links to the theme which is covered in the ebook about the difference between young and old. Then we get Mr. Burling's pride coming out. I was Lord Mayor here 2 years ago. There's a very good chance of a knighthood. And that shows that he's concerned with his social status. And of course, it's ironic because knighthoods are given to people who, have served society well, and Mr. Burling doesn't care about society. Mrs. Burling is described as being superior, and that's quite interesting because in relation to her husband, she's being described as his superior. I always think that one is ambiguous. And put a comment in the comment section if you think you can identify ways in which she is superior. And then Mr. Burling again, this sort of pride. I was an alderman for years and I'm still on the bench. He reminds us of his position to try and exert authority over the inspector. And this again is a sign of great pride. So those are some of the other key quotations. There are a few pages of them in the ebook, but I just wanted to explain the thinking behind them, the importance of stage directions, and how we can link those quotations to some important explanation.